question. You're getting pitched by entrepreneurs every single day. If somebody's looking to try to get their idea it turned into a business, it requires funding. What should they not do?
Entrepreneurs, when they're pitching their business, have to be cognizant of the investor they're talking to is looking at hundreds of opportunities. And there's good sides and things that get me excited and move to the top of the list, but there's things that definitely move you to the bottom of the list. And you got to be careful about those.
Hey everyone, Bradley Bostic here for episode 22 of Boombostic Health. We have my friend Adam Heller in the studio today. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So Adam, I'll introduce him more formally here in a minute, but he's a very mild-mannered kind of person. And don't let it fool you. I had a long drive competition with Adam the first time we met on a simulator. And I actually was in the lead, which was a miracle because I normally cannot bring together the timing to really do very well. And there was one chance left for you, and Adam steps up and just rips this drive. I don't remember how far it went. It was like 3 something. I don't.
Was there 3 sounds nice? I mean, it was. I don't know if I could hit it. Maybe downhill, downwind.
It was like John Daly in his prime had shown up. So anyway, you'll get to know Adam here a little bit more, but he definitely is a competitive builder who has created some amazing value in his career as an investment banker, and now fast forwarding to Oakwood Circle Ventures, which is his venture capital firm. And I, in full disclosure, have had the privilege also to count Adam as a partner in our company, 3Aware, which is a really exciting growth business that's bringing innovation through real-world evidence into the medical device space. So, Adam, I'll let you tell your story and introduce yourself, but thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, great. I'm happy to be here, and thanks for saying those nice things about my golf game. I'm glad we were just driving, because if you saw the rest of my game, you wouldn't be so complimentary. The one thing I could do is hit it far, but I can't hit it very straight.
Well, this summer we'll have to get out and see if we both do an actual course in the wild.
Would love to. I don't know. I'm so highly esteemed now with my drive. Maybe I should just end it there. But anyway, thanks for having me. Yeah, again, my name's Adam Heller. I'm a career investment banker. So I did it for about 17 years before starting this venture fund, Oakwood Circle Ventures. I think my healthcare journey really started from my dad. He was in the pharmaceutical industry my whole life. So I watched him and got exposure to healthcare for a long time through his work. When I started at Bank of America, I was a generalist. I did a lot of deals in a lot of different industries, some of which were in healthcare. And that's when I really started to understand the business side of healthcare. Obviously, it's a very important industry to everyone, both personally and to their families. So I always knew it was important, but I never really kind of thought about the business aspects. But then when I really started to see how these healthcare companies operate and how they could be good business models, make profits, be good for their shareholders and stakeholders, but also actually do good for society, I thought that was really inspiring compared to some other industries where a lot of times it was just about, potentially making a buck, or they weren't quite adding value into society like a positive healthcare company could. So I really liked it, and then had that exposure through my dad. And that's when I decided to really, dive deeper into healthcare. I left being a generalist at Bank of America. I joined a firm called William Blair here in Chicago. That's when I started really focusing in healthcare and then learning the ins and outs of all the different great companies that were out there, again, that were solid businesses, but also good for society, which I think is really important to me. Fast forward about 15 years later, been in healthcare a long time. I learned a lot along the way. I saw a lot of the problems in the industry. I mean, I think everybody knows that it's one of our biggest industries. It's so important to everybody, again, personally and to their families. It's one of our most costly industries from a GDP perspective. I mean, $4 trillion plus to spend. Really important sector in our overall economy, yet it's just so poorly run. It's inefficient, it's slow to move, its adoption of technology is so far behind other industries. I've really started to notice all the problems that our industry is ripe with over many years. And I've seen throughout my career in advising young entrepreneurs, young companies, helping them think through their capital, their M&A activity, for many years, that there's a lot of great solutions out there, but having those solutions actually make an impact in this complex ecosystem is really challenging. And I became passionate about helping these companies try to find a way to actually kind of untangle some of this complex web or the pretzel, however you want to describe it, that our healthcare industry is. So eventually I created Oakwood Circle Ventures to do a couple of things. One is to invest in these companies. So capital is always going to be important. You're going to need capital to grow, scale, make a bigger impact, but really try to be a strategic partner to these companies and support them in any way I can with things I've learned along the way, things my partners have learned along the way, to support them with the right guidance, networks, and open the right doors for them to really try to make an impact in this ecosystem. So now here I am with Oakwood Circle Ventures. We're a year into the firm. We've made 5 investments thus far. I'm excited about each of them because I think in each in their own way, they are making an impact, and we want to help them continue to scale that impact, broadly across the ecosystem.
Got it. So rewinding a bit, when you were at Bank of America, you mentioned that you started to have your eyes opened to the business of healthcare.
Sure.
How does the business of healthcare work? And can you recall some light bulbs turning on in terms of just fundamentally how the business works of healthcare? Because I think that's one of the hardest parts, is to truly like grasp
Yeah.
something that's such a different model than any other industry. It's the least rational probably of any industry.
Yeah, I think what's really unique about healthcare is the consumer of the service is generally not the one paying for it. It's generally paid for by a third party, insurance. A lot of times it's the government, which makes it a really interesting kind of supply demand or transactional environment where generally you, the consumer, I want to buy something. The money's coming out of my own pocket to purchase that.
Even further to that point, you as the consumer aren't necessarily even deciding which thing you want to buy.
Oh, sure.
So I hadn't ever really thought about it this way, but it's almost like, imagine that you were walking into a mall and there was this like invisible force that brought you to the store that it wanted you to be in, and then told you the thing that you were going to get off the shelf. But then there was some other thing that paid for it that didn't actually come out of your bank account, and you were sort of loosely related. I mean,
Right.
it's like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and you barely get a choice too. I mean, if you're gonna go buy a pair of pants, yeah, you get by that invisible force, you get guided. These are the pants for you. It doesn't matter if they fit, doesn't matter if it's your style. Those are your pants, and hey, we're gonna pay for it. It's okay.
You could be bursting at the seams in those
Right,
pants.
exactly. So yeah, it makes it a really unique industry as opposed to most other industries. Again, the buyer and the seller are directly transacting with each other. And I think that's one of the reasons why healthcare has been so slow to innovate, is because there's a lack of consumerism and a lack of consumer choice. Where I'm capitalist. I believe in free markets. I think free markets will bring, the right resources, the right spend to the right solutions or the right products. But again, when the consumer themselves not making that choice, it creates a real challenge in the ecosystem.
That's fascinating. So your dad was in pharma.
Yep.
You came out of school and went to work in banking, and then eventually narrowed more and more into healthcare. Spent 17 years with Ziegler doing banking, and then decided, hey, I want to go start my own fund. And that has resulted already in 5 investments. What are the things that you really are keying in on when you decide to invest in something? I bet you've seen 500 things.
Sure. Yeah.
You chose
It's fair.
5.
Yeah. I hate to be generic, but I just say innovation. I just think it's so important where a lot of the companies we've invested or the companies I've been really attracted to are the ones that are truly innovating and understanding the problem, understanding that they have a solution to that problem that's differentiated, makes a difference. It brings things like access, things like engagement, things like navigation, things like better data liquidity, things that are proactive versus reactive. These are a lot of the legacy problems in the healthcare ecosystem. I think the companies that have been really attractive to us are the ones that understand some of those themes and actually know how to make an impact on those themes. They're not just saying them, or there's some, technology platform that doesn't really know how it's going to impact this complex ecosystem. I feel like those that understand that impact, can articulate that impact, can reach the right customers that are willing to pay for that impact. Those have been the best solutions that I've liked thus far.
So in some cases, people have a solution in search of a problem. it sounds like what you're describing is these are people and companies that truly understand a specific problem that has an economic driver that will allow it to prosper.
Well said. Yeah, exactly. So whether it's things like we don't know how to engage with our member population, our patient population, and we all know insurance companies want to better engage with their members to have them do things that are healthier, keep them out of the hospital, longer term health and well being for those members. Um, health systems want to engage with their patients because they want them to go to them as the first resource for whenever they have healthcare needs. So everybody's trying to engage with these consumers, and it's really challenging to do that. So a solution that can figure out how to engage with these members in the right way, I think it's just one example of they see the problem with, hey, everybody wants to engage. We don't know how to do it. We've got the right mousetrap to get these patients or members to engage with us in the right way. And in that case, I think everybody wins. And again, back to my point about why healthcare is such a great business to be in is because I think you can do for the greater good by having a successful business. So you're successful in engaging with those members. It creates a good business, but everybody wins because then the patient's healthier. The payer gets to engage with that patient better, engage them in healthier behaviors, lowers their costs. The health system gets to engage with that patient at the right time when their needs are highest, and everybody wins in that ecosystem. Again, which I think is pretty unique in healthcare where everybody can win from a good business model.
So there's another aspect to what you just talked about, which is who has the money. And it's interesting because you see health systems talking about how their margins they have so much pressure, it's so costly, they're trying to cut people here and there. But then you see a new health system, a health system building a new building that they spend $5 billion on. It's a little bit of a weird paradox
Sure.
on that note.
Yeah.
Do you see that as well?
Yeah, yeah. To your point, I think there's so much spend in healthcare. I just think it's got to be the right spend. It's got to be things that are actually improving the health and well-being of folks, improving the delivery of healthcare, improving providers' lives. I mean, that's a big theme I've been focused on lately. Is just there's tremendous shortages of labor. You're always going to need healthcare services. I think the hands-on patient care isn't going away. There's no app that's going to replace a doctor or a nurse, treating a patient at their bedside. So I think that it's really important to make their lives easier. So I guess I'll just keep using the word efficiency. There are solutions that can fit in between those dynamics that actually brings efficiency where that's relevant spend, where it makes sense to allocate part of this big pool of money towards bringing that efficiency so everything else gets better. I might argue that a big building like you're describing, maybe that's nice for that health system, but does that make everything in the ecosystem better? Probably not.
It's interesting when I hear you talk about the bedside and that you actually have to have a person there to implement care, even though we'll have humanoid robots and there's AI that's emerging that can address a lot of the like knowledge worker. We were talking actually with my team at HC1 the other day about how on these large supply chain initiatives that the company will execute, they're now using this machine learning approach to where they can just ask the question of what they need to find out of the 400-page contract, and it'll instantaneously come back with this is that point that otherwise would have taken a week to go review that. So there's this increasing acceleration with AI to surface certain insights and information, but ultimately then it takes a person to go like turn the wrench.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah. Sure.
it's I think the analog exists in healthcare that I saw this South Park episode recently
Okay.
that you should watch if you have not. That is it's this parody, basically the social satire on how AI is like taking out all of these knowledge oriented jobs that you have to go get all these advanced degrees for. And ultimately what happens is the two primary like home services companies in town, those two founders become the billionaires. Like they're literally the guys who are, able to turn the wrench and swing the hammer. 'Cause
Oh
you
yeah.
can't do that with
Right.
AI. And then eventually they start competing with buying up social media companies, and eventually they start competing to see who can get to outer space, with a space company. But
Okay.
the point is, um, in healthcare, I think that's the metaphor is there's a certain point at which technology can do the work, but somebody still has to turn the wrench. Somebody still has to engage with the people. And I think the power of technology, I'd be curious to get your take on this, is that it can enable those people who are the caregivers to perform at the very top of their license, to eliminate all of this like waste of time stuff that they've had to do manually, but make it so they can give that energy to patient care and driving those changes that ultimately result in healthier patients.
Yeah,
What do you
completely. Yeah, completely agreed. Yeah, and I'm a big believer in technology. Trust me, I think technology is a way to solve a lot of these inefficiency problems we have in healthcare. But you're totally right. It's the technology can help with the administration of healthcare, not the actual delivery of the service. I don't think the delivery of the service is going away. You mentioned robots. I don't know how many hundreds of years we are away from a robot delivering bedside care, but I don't think we're going to see it in our lifetimes. In the meantime, there's true people that are highly trained, highly costly, that are delivering that bedside care, and to make them as most efficient and most effective as possible, I think technology can be working in the background, like you said, either working at the top of your license or making sure the patient record is in front of that provider ahead of the appointment, where you've captured data along the way, not just, hey, I saw you 6 months ago, what happened back then, but what's happened in the 6 months during that stretch, where there's a lot of diagnostic data, health and wellness data that you can track to really understand the patient's condition better versus the legacy way of just, hey, how are you feeling? What's been going on? I really think, technology can sit in the background and have that data at the ready. Again, that makes the encounter with that provider who has to provide that service a hell of a lot more efficient and more effective because they're going to be a lot smarter in delivering that care. So I completely agree with your point that the technology in the background enables all the good services in the front ground, if that's a word, or
foreground?
foreground. There you go.
You
There you go.
got it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I hear you. And so a specific example of this is 3Aware, I would say. And just to drill into that, so the issue is that medical devices, which range from sterile gauze all the way to a heart valve or a stent or an artificial hip, it's this really exhaustive set of different uh, types of products. There has not been enough time in any expert's day to actually go through and analyze in detail what devices actually deliver the best possible outcomes or the
Right.
best possible quality. And so what it ends up resulting in is a given orthopedic surgeon, for example, will have their preferences on a certain device, and they may be operating in the same health system or under the same health plan that another physician in their same specialty has a completely different opinion
Mhm.
about what's the best. And there hasn't been objective insight into what truly delivers on the best outcome at the
Yep.
best cost. And so using technology, the other challenge with this is the the details on all of it is buried in physician notes that are not structured. So how can you find out what's the best device if you can't even standardize on how that's measured? So what 3Aware has done is created this system that interrogates all those medical records with technology and surfaces those insights on the best quality and ultimately provides that insight in a way that can help the medical device companies comply with regulations and also deliver better products and moving forward faster at a lower cost. So you get better devices that cost less. Medical device companies successful, health systems successful, physicians are successful, patients are healthy. That to me is an example of where the technology does not replace the people. It actually does something that there aren't enough people on earth, though, to actually go do to the betterment of everyone in the entire ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, it's just you're totally right. It just makes the people smarter about doing their jobs because they're so busy. There's not enough providers. Surgeons just going to keep doing surgeries, and they just want to see as many patients as they can because there's so many people in line waiting to do that surgery. They don't have the time to think about what is the best device or best way to perform this surgery that's going to be most effective, going to produce the most or the best patient outcomes. And that's where again technology in the background can support these services to help them be more effective at it. Because I think, patient outcomes is a key. Everyone talks about it. Every healthcare company says, hey, we want better patient outcomes. But how do you measure those? How do you set the right guidelines in place so you're producing better patient outcomes? It's really challenging. And I think to your point about the data, understanding through the patient records, following that patient longitudinally, you can start to get a lot smarter about making decisions. This starts to get into clinical decision support. It gets into device purchasing. It gets into surgeries. Just making the right decision for that patient at the right time. I think we can get a lot smarter about doing that through technology, through better data capture, where historically the technology just hasn't been there for us to be smart enough about it. Where I think now the technology has finally caught up. The service part of it hasn't changed much. It's still the same service, but that service can be just so much more effective with the power of the data behind it.
Absolutely. And I think we're starting to see the system shift more to healthcare instead of sick care,
Sure.
which is good for all of us.
Yeah.
So, moving the conversation in a little different direction, you're getting pitched by entrepreneurs every single day about their ideas, about their opportunities. And there are certain things that you would probably recommend never doing. Like, what is, if somebody's looking to try to get their idea it turned into a business, it requires funding. What should they not do?
I mean, there's a lot of things. I think entrepreneurs, when they're pitching their business, have to be cognizant of the investor they're talking to is looking at hundreds of opportunities. So, standing out is really important. There's a lot of ways to stand out, but I'd say they're also looking for red flags. And just because you have to have a filtering mechanism, if you're going to look at 100 opportunities, how do you filter that down to the 3 or 5 that are going to be really compelling? Again, there's good sides and things that get me excited and move to the top of the list, but there's things that definitely move you to the bottom of the list, and you got to be careful about those. A couple examples that come to mind are over forecasting. I've seen so many companies that we're $1 million of revenue. Next year, we're going to be 12 million of revenue. So you're going to 12 times in 1 year. The following year, we're going to be 50, and so on. And I just never find those forecasts realistic. I think sometimes it says something about the entrepreneur themselves that, they need to be grounded in a dose of reality, especially in healthcare. As we talk, how hard it is to scale in this space, make an impact, get in front of the right health systems or payers, or even touch the consumer, employers. All these different stakeholders move incredibly slow. So for anybody that's going to think that they're going to 12 times their revenue in 1 year, just tells me that they're not realistic. I'd say, especially on near-term forecasting, where a lot of times, next month we're going to be X, and next month the month after that we're going to be 3X. I don't find that realistic either, and you got to be really careful about that, because a lot of these investor conversations, you're getting to know that entrepreneur over a several month stretch, and you're actually going to watch them perform against what they told you they're going to do. And that's something I really look for is, hey, what did you forecast, and did you actually do that? Because I think that if you do it, it adds credibility to everything else they're telling you. But if they way over forecasted, they miss in the month after month that you're getting to know them, how can you rely on anything else they're telling them? So I think you got to be really careful about over forecasting, over promising.
So do what you say you're going to do, and probably to that end be maybe more conservative. But the counter to that is investors get excited about these, exciting forecasts.
Yeah.
So how do you toe that line?
It's a balance. This may be a personal opinion versus anything factual or not. I really like just the bottoms up forecasting, really understanding who your existing customers are. What are they buying today? What are they going to buy going forward? Are they going to continue to expand, whether it's more of the same product, more of a new product? How are your existing customers going to expand? And then looking at your pipeline and understanding our legacy customers, this is why they bought it. Here's the new customers in our pipeline. Why are they going to buy it? Is it for the same reasons? Or what do we learn from our historical customers that's going to help us sell and provide more value to our new customers? And then really looking at your forecast, building that up, bottoms up. And if the answer to that is, hey, we're a rocket ship, great. But you really got to prove it from that bottoms up analysis. I just personally don't like the top down of, we're this great solution, huge problem, $100 billion market. We're just going to capture 2% of this market, and now we're this massive company.
Right.
Which, again, that's just not thoughtful, and it's not understanding your customer base. It's not understanding your product. So I think if you can justify that lofty forecast to get folks excited, do it. But just to throw out a lofty forecast because it gets investors excited, if you're a smart investor, I think you can see right through it. again, you almost lose credibility in that game versus trying to get someone overly excited.
Yeah, obviously healthcare is a huge market and every single little niche in healthcare is billions.
Yeah, right.
So just to say, well, hey, all we need is 1% of that.
Yeah.
That's great. But what is the detail behind the plan? And also probably having the fortitude just to say, this is what it's going to take to execute. And that is going to take some capital. It is going to take some time.
Yep.
And ultimately, though, as that flywheel starts to spin, because it is such a big market, when we take these detailed steps, eventually it results in this bigger outcome.
You got it. Yeah. So I think approaching that with both enthusiasm and humility together is an important way to showcase that. So you got to be excited. You have to be enthusiastic about what you're building. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs mistake that for, I'm so enthusiastic, that's why I'm going to throw out this huge forecast. But I don't think that's the right way. I think it's, hey, I know I have a great solution. Well, first of all, I know there's a big problem. I know I have a great solution to this problem. I can prove it via these customers that are buying it. They're excited about it. We're providing value. We're getting great feedback. Look at the ROI we're providing to our customers. So you start there, and that's why you're excited. And you got to prove that kind of piece of the story versus just, hey, look at how excited I am. I'm going to throw a bunch of numbers in an Excel file, and now you're going to be excited. So I think the enthusiasm is really important, but you also have to have some sense of humility based on your point here. Again, it's so hard to scale in this market. You have to understand these customers are going to move slow. You could have a cure for cancer, but it might take a long time for folks to really realize, oh, wow, this actually really is a cure for cancer. We need to start adopting this. I think that's where the humility comes in, that you understand the pace at which, even if it's the greatest solution, at which it's going to get adopted. So there's a fine balance, I think, on that topic as well.
Is there a great success story you can reflect on as you look back on all the deals, 75 or so M&A deals? What's a great success story?
What's a great success? Some of the companies that I think that have really found a way to do a lot of things I've talked about, where they understood the problem and then they showcase their solution and then they produce an ROI. So, one of my favorite deals ever, for a lot of reasons. One, I really like the company. I really like what they did. But it was also just very successful from an investment process. We got, there's 40 investors interested. It's traded for a huge multiple. Everybody was happy. The new investor is extremely pleased, post-investment. So it was an everybody wins scenario, but in the patient navigation space.
Okay.
Where they helped transfer centers within a health system navigate patients throughout the health system. So if you...
So was it like care management from a navigation perspective, or it was more like logistics?
I would call it more logistics. So it's bed management. So you're a big health system. You've got 8 different buildings. You have a certain patient that has a certain condition that they need a certain type of specialist. Where do you send them? Where do you transfer them? They might be coming through your emergency room doors. They might be coming from primary care. They might be in a different building with a different specialist. It's not well suited for them. But understanding that, hey, this patient can see this doctor and this doctor is available within their schedule. There's a bed there in the health system. And then navigating that effort to get that patient transferred from that one building to the appropriate building in the appropriate bed is actually a really challenging process. You'd think it'd be a lot easier, but legacy of that is a bunch of manual phone calls. You're calling the other building, hey, do you have availability? Oh, no, you don't. I'll call the next building. Oh, is Dr. Smith available? No, Dr. Smith's schedule's full. To match all that up, this is again where I think technology can come in and bring efficiency. Now we know that, hey, this person has this needs, this resource within our own health system network has the ability to serve those needs. Let's find a way to most efficiently transfer them from that spot to the appropriate spot. And what I really liked about it is that there's tremendous value to the health system from an ROI perspective, because a lot of times health systems weren't able to identify that and they would lose that patient. The patient would go to the doctor down the street or a different health system, but to really keep that patient in the network and keep them in an efficient stay, meaning a lot of times they get stuck in a bed and there's long delays. So from a business perspective, it's bad. It's bad for the patient because they're going to get sitting there getting sicker, waiting for the right resource. I think that's another example where there can be a really good business to solve that problem, and it's everybody wins. The patient wins, the health system gets better. The insurance company wins too, because they're paying for less because there's a more efficient process to treat that patient and get them discharged and back on to a healthier track.
Are you allowed to say what the company's name was?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's called Central Logic.
Central Logic. Okay, cool. I think a lot of people would like to look that up, including me. So Talk about Oakwood Circle. So you have a certain profile you're looking for. There are people out there listening that have their idea, have their business. Maybe it's getting rolling. What's the stage? How much do you like to invest? What would you like to share for any listeners that might be, should reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. Digital health is a main focus of mine. I think people throw that term around a lot, but it's kind of it goes along with a lot of the ways I've been speaking about technology in healthcare, where it's actually improving the delivery, access, engagement, data capture, data understanding, where the technology sits in the background and helps do that. So I describe that as digital health. There's pure play tech in there. There's tech enabled services, but any way that technology is getting incorporated into the healthcare delivery system and improving it, that's so key to me. It's not just a fancy app, and it's not just a service that's masquerading as a technology company. There's a lot of things in between that really actually provide value. So digital health, certainly an area of focus. And then we're also focused on med tech. So and there, same thing. I think it's an innovative focus within med tech, where there's a lot of legacy devices out there where the healthcare system or doctors are used to doing certain things a certain way, but there's actually new and cutting edge ways to deliver devices, whether it's diagnostics or therapeutics, where it's maybe a different way to think about it or a different way to deliver it, and it can actually bring better results. So a lot of the companies I've liked are traditional areas where if a patient has a certain condition, they prescribe a drug, and that drug is mildly effective. Maybe it's effective, maybe it's not. But generally, that's going to go throughout your body. It's going to have lots of side effects. We've seen a lot of companies where you might be able to solve that with a simple device that can have the same level of efficacy that drug does, but almost no side effects.
In a more targeted way.
And more, yeah, and exactly. That's why it's more, yeah. So that gets
so
us
cool.
excited.
That's really exciting.
And then also in med tech, just kind of the monitoring and data. We keep talking about data. I believe it's important. Again, a lot of these legacy devices it's a hip replacement. They've been doing those for years, but there's a lot of, I call them monitoring tools out there that can understand the patient better, capture better data that allows the patient to be healthier, more engaged in their own health, and then the provider to be smarter and more effective.
Right.
So again, I'd lean towards more of the cutting edge, innovative area within the med tech space.
Okay. So tech, digital health, software, making healthcare better, and then devices that actually are therapeutics somewhat that can solve problems in a more targeted, personalized way.
Yeah, therapeutics or even diagnostics.
Or
In a certain way, we're measuring things
Interesting. Okay.
in a legacy, outdated way, where it might be in hospital, where things like in-home monitoring I think is really valuable, especially for seniors.
Yeah.
Things that can monitor fall
doubt.
detection.
Yeah, I think the more that we can be in an ambulatory environment where people aren't getting hospitalized, the better. And
Right.
That's probably an opportunity.
Yeah, the capturing data in between appointments thing is very valuable to me.
Right.
Just again, we talked about you go to your doctor once every year, once every 6 months, and you kind of have to think back, hey, what happened to me over the last 6 months?
Yeah.
And that's what the doctor has to go on to make their clinical decision. That is not the most effective way. Understanding that patient from a objective way through hard data, I think can really make those providers a lot smarter about the therapeutics they may decide to use.
Right.
So that's where I think diagnostics can be interesting as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, you certainly have the right background, and I know it's been a great partnership for us at 3Aware, and really appreciate
So
it.
excited to be a part of the team.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you on the show here, Adam. Would love to have you back on as all of this progresses. And so thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Great to be a part of it.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll now be transitioning to The Verdict with Emily to talk some more about the ins and outs in the legal space for investments in healthcare. Thanks a lot. All right, folks, here we are with The Verdict with Emily, coming on the heels of Oakwood Circle Ventures, Adam Heller's podcast episode, who Adam, is looking at hundreds of different deals. And Emily, as you have been working in healthcare for a long time and attend events like the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, which is like the largest gathering of people in finance and raising capital out there. Adam,
Dating.
yeah, speed
Finance.
dating. Yeah, speed dating for finance. Exactly. It strikes me that you probably have some interesting perspective on what really is compelling and what isn't. And I'd also say that as you're advising clients who are making investments or making acquisitions, you hear from an inside scoop perspective what really stands out from the crowd. Would love to hear your point of view. And by the way, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I thought Adam described it really interesting. When we were at JPM, we talked about what makes a pitch stand out from others. And I think Adam's way of describing folks who go in and they're super excited about their product, but don't necessarily convey the profitability of it or what they're trying to do, what the end goal is, was really important. I think his idea of a bottom up approach where you basically show what's working now and then can like describe a strategic growth plan based on the things that you have in place and how that's going to accelerate growth is really important. I think what I've seen, and you've probably seen this as well, is lots of times folks just aren't great at describing their product. They're so excited about it and the excitement comes through, but the investors left sort of scratching their head and wondering, well, what are we so excited about? So I think his approach was really interesting.
Doesn't it also relate to the payer world and this whole issue he raised about the consumer of healthcare isn't picking necessarily what they're getting, and then they're not paying for it. So that creates this other strange dynamic. In other words, how you actually follow the money and demonstrate clearly that whatever your business is connects into those economic power centers that
Yeah.
exist in healthcare.
Yeah, so I mean that's an interesting point. We see that all the time. There are things that are really great for patient care, but maybe there isn't reimbursement for those things now. And so trying to make payers aware of why this makes sense now, even if it might cost them a little bit more money up front, how it brings down their costs in the long run. And patients really don't realize those metrics. The patients just want the best care, right? And so the innovative ideas of these entrepreneurs oftentimes are best care. It's just trying to make the rest of the industry catch up and realize why this is a good thing.
In the lab space and diagnostic world specifically, Adam brought up the investments that Oakwood Circle is making and what stands out for them. And it reminded me of all this talk about lab developed tests and whether FDA has oversight and how that needs to work. Any thoughts on if you've got a diagnostic, how you go to the step of making it so it gets paid for, right? It's sort of a vague question, but curious to know based on what you've seen, how do I take my diagnostic and show a guy like Adam, hey, this has a great path to monetize?
Yeah, so that is a highly regulated process. It depends on the diagnostic device. LDTs, that's a whole different ball of wax. You brought those up, but actually the LDT final rule was actually just paused a couple weeks ago because of the federal court, I think it was down in Texas, basically agreed that the FDA didn't have jurisdiction over the LDTs and remanded it back down to HHS. Or I think it was down to HHS. Full disclosure, guys, I have a sinus infection, so it might not be HHS. I might be unclear on that. But I mean, showing the profitability of a device, I mean, there's a whole research process that goes into that, right? So it's not just showing the value, but it's showing why the device actually works, taking all that data, getting the approval through the FDA, and then presenting that to payers in a way that makes sense to them. And in my experience, at first blush, payers say no, right? They don't want to spend money on anything. And they have a different concept of medical necessity than I think providers and patients do. And so showing the value based on the research, I think, is the best way to do that.
And then ultimately that there's a big enough market for it to really matter, which, Adam
Sure.
also touched on. Excellent. Well, thank you. I know you're a bit under the weather. Thanks so much for joining me today to reflect on the conversation with Adam. Uh,
Yeah.
Really appreciate, I always love reflecting on the conversation. Thanks everybody for joining us for the Boombostic Health podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.